Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of my book writing journal. I've been inspired to do this by another author whose book dropped a couple of weeks ago, and her book is called You Do You-ish, and the author is Erin Hatzakostas. So thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your book writing journal because it's inspired me to do my own. And the reason why I'd like to do this is to share, the process with you, because this for me is like a once in a lifetime thing. Well, it's a first in a lifetime thing for me. And maybe I'll do this more than once, but certainly it's a first in a lifetime opportunity for me. And I'm not really so open in sharing these experiences. And certainly I haven't been in the past. And I thought, well, what's happened over the last 8 weeks as I've been diving into, formally into the book writing process is I've had to become very inward focusing. And that means that I haven't been on social media. It means I haven't been returning people's calls as quickly as I normally would, or even messages, because I've been so head down in processing, I'll be honest with you, some of the overwhelm of the book writing process. And as arduous as it seems some days, it's also a really beautiful process. So I'm going to use this as a platform to share with you my own book writing process and to share with you what's happening for me. So I hope you find it interesting. I welcome all of your encouragement. And I'm even, after I talk for a little bit here today, I'm going to share with you one of the versions I've written for my cold opening. So hang on for that. Do hang on for that. But I wind back the clock. So, how did I come to be writing a book in the first place? And I could go all the way back to when I was 13, when I was writing short stories. And I was writing, what I thought were really cutesy short stories, and I got really good feedback. And then as I went through school, I continued to write. And over the years, I've constantly been a writer. So I've been writing all the way through my school years, all the way through my career. And actually, for the last 20 years, I've been doing professional writing to help companies win business. And it's based on the arguments that we put forward, it's based on the writing that we do, and the value that we were able to demonstrate through the writing that we're able to win these contracts. So writing for me has been a big part of the process of my life, really. It's been a big part of my life. But going back to when I was younger, when I moved to Dubai, I was stuffing things into boxes and working out what to keep and what to throw away. And when I started Storyhouse, I had this memory that perhaps I'd kept these stories from when I was 13. Perhaps I kept some other journals that, I was a little bit embarrassed to read, if I'm honest. And so I called my mum and said, hey, in my sister's shed or a big container in her backyard are these boxes. And I think there's some material in there that would be really helpful for my story writing process or my book writing process. And so my mum found them. And it's almost as if my future self at that time of making that decision had said, hold on to these because you might need them. And so I received them a few weeks ago and I've been slowly digesting them. But I can also see that even my younger self had programmed me to move here to London, where I live today, because I'd written about living in the UK or moving to the UK or traveling around the UK. And so it's really fascinating just to go back and look at that and see how things unfold in your life. And so this whole book writing thing has been, pretty deep. It's taking me back to things that I'd forgotten about, things that I wasn't present to. And it's taken me to places that may feel uncomfortable, but are perhaps necessary to unpack once more, one more time. And through the unpacking, I'm seeing things from a different perspective. And that's part of how this book is coming together. So if you said to me, what's your book about? I'm going to say to you, well, I'm not quite sure what the final book will be about, but I did write something for everybody a little while ago. Actually, it was in January. And I said, I needed to learn how to listen deeply to myself to understand why I kept losing my hearing, which has been a theme of my life. And it was in the deafening silence that I heard the voice of my soul and my hearing began to return. And that was, sounds like a pretty profound statement, but it's also a true statement for what happened for me throughout my life. And I put that out there as being, I'm going to start writing a book, and this is one of the ideas. And so I know that part of my book is about deeply listening to yourself. I know that part of my book is about the reflections and what I learned on many of the travels and journeys that I took to understand, what happens in life when we do certain things, what happens when we start to listen in a different way. So that's definitely a theme. And I've been caught in the overwhelm of not really knowing, is this going to be a business book? Is this going to be a memoir? Is it going to be a mix of two? And what I've had to really, surrender to is the process of just not knowing, what this is going to be about. But if I read my cold opening, which is a way to draw you into my story and what I'm writing, this may give you a flavor. And this, I'm sharing this, I'm a little bit nervous sharing this and reading this, out loud, because then I have to hear it myself. I'm going to share this with you, and I would love to hear your reflection on one option for a cold opening. This isn't the only one. I've written others, and it'll give you a sense of my writing style so far. It hasn't been edited, not in any way. And yeah, I'd love to hear what you think. So just imagine you're sitting with my book and you're opening the front cover, and this is the first thing that you read. Light rain was falling gently around me when I stepped out of the room at the Kandahar Hotel and started walking the short distance between the accommodation quarters and the offices. It wasn't a real hotel, of course, but it was as close as you might come to finding one in the middle of a military base. Similarly, what we called offices on the base were far from the luxury glass towers housing our corporate headquarters in Dubai. They were more akin to the temporary containers you see at a construction site. So I was surprised to discover that amidst this ramshackle of buildings was the heartbeat of outsourced catering and logistics operations for the military at the airbase. In the very moment that I stepped into the open ground between the two compounds, the wailing of the emergency sirens began, and a robotic voice warned of impending danger. Like a scene from a movie, time itself seemed to slow down, and I felt myself hanging in suspended animation as I weighed up my options. Do I run to the bunker, or do I stay where I am? Fully present to the moment, I felt my heart rate rise as the adrenaline started to move through my body, and I took in everything around me all at once. In the next moment, I dropped face first into the cold mud beneath my feet and pressed myself against the side of the accommodation container with my hands over my head, knowing from our training that the taller I stood, the more severe the damage if a rocket happened to land nearby. I felt the moisture from the ground start to seep into my jeans and my jacket while the alarm continued to broadcast its grim warning. Rocket attack, rocket attack. If the mud wasn't cold enough, I also had to contend with the roof of the container depositing its runoff onto my back. Better wet than dead, I thought to myself. People continued to run past me towards the bunker, and I shouted to them to get on the ground. We would be briefed later about the loss of a team member, bringing into stark relief how dangerous this was, how precious life is, and how much we take it for granted. In the recesses of my mind were two thoughts. I don't want to die today. And what the fuck am I doing here? This was not the day to meditate on those thoughts, though. I could do that later. Pressed as I was to the earth, I felt the ground vibrate, and I could make out the dull thud of rockets landing somewhere else in the airfield. It's hard to feel complete relief that your sector wasn't hit when you know that there's every possibility that others have been less lucky than you. Such is the random nature of these attacks from unseen enemies. It was the first time I'd experienced such an attack, and no amount of safety training can prepare you for the reality of entering an active combat zone. You were forced to confront the very real possibility that your death could be marked up on a report as collateral damage in a conflict you don't even agree with. In many respects, I wasn't even meant to be there. I was born in an era when people went to the military as an alternative to university. And it isn't too hard to imagine that I too might have followed in the footsteps of both my parents and my sister, who each served many years in the armed forces. And it wasn't that I didn't try. I spoke to the recruitment officers several times, often calling from payphones in case they would recognize our phone number. In case they would recognize our phone number. Each time the answer was the same. They don't take deaf kids. What about deaf and gay with an interest in meditation, crystals, spiritual healing, and peace? No, I don't think they take deaf and gay kids. Certainly not back in the day, and I know a lot's changed since then. So imagine my surprise at the irony of ending up in the middle of Operation Enduring Freedom when my military family didn't go to a war like this. Afraid as I was in that moment, I was also quietly exhilarated to be there, something I've only come to realize as I put pen to paper for this book. Perhaps in some perverse way, my childhood desire to be good enough in the eyes of my father in particular, did come true. So how does a relatively sensitive young man with an interest in meditation, crystals, spirituality, and peace find himself face down in the mud in Kandahar airfield in the midst of the longest war in US history? Does it even matter? I've saved that story for another chapter in this book, and as unlikely as that story feels to me even today, there are many more like it. But in sharing them, I hope to inspire you to live your own unlikely tale, to go on adventures if your heart calls, and to surrender to a dream that's bigger than you. I would love nothing more than for you to truly believe with every fiber of your being that the seemingly impossible is more possible than you realize. But it requires you to be willing to say yes to life in a Michael Singer kind of way. When I said yes to life at a time when life was giving me lemons, I never imagined that I would sleep under 1,000,000 stars beneath 500-year-old dragon's blood trees on a remote island off the coast of Yemen, or that I would have tea with Bedouins in the back roads of Petra in Jordan, or witness turtles hatching on a deserted beach in Oman as I walked the same shores as the Queen of Sheba. To a boy like me from inner Melbourne, this was the stuff of dreams. Dreams that started to come true when I listened to a deeper voice inside that called me to the temple ruins of Palmyra and Cracked Chevalier in Syria before the conflict there. The voice that urged me onwards through the Levant and down to the Giza Plateau in Egypt, where I would return again in 2011 to sleep in the same hotel as Shirley MacLaine and see the pyramids as she had seen them from the rooftop of the Sphinx Guest House in 1982. It's the voice that inspired me to explore the crystal city of Machu Picchu in Peru and the sacred mountains that surround Cusco before walking the medicine path of the shamans in the Amazon. That same voice that guided me to the Maya lands of Guatemala, to Tikal, and onwards to the belly button of the earth at Lake Atitlan. It's the same voice that kept me company on the long road from Bangkok to Siem Reap, so I could stand in wonder at the long lost city of Angkor Wat at sunrise. That spoke with a monk in Laos by a lily pond in the temple grounds about his seemingly incomprehensible dreams of becoming an engineer. I showed him photos of the vast sandy deserts and rock-carved ruins that he had never even imagined. It's the deeper voice that helped me to speak up when I saw a chance to fulfill a childhood dream of riding a horse on the Mongolian steppe and to ask myself the time off work so I could learn yoga in the Himalayas. In these moments, I always discovered something else which urged me ever onwards, like the deep shamanic wisdom steeped in the Mongolian culture, or the power of healers to shift your reality in mind-bending ways without using any drugs or substances. It's the voice that helped me to speak at conferences, to ask for promotions, that coached my teams, and that eventually helped me to say, enough is enough, when the corporate life showed itself to be less about living and more like a march towards a slow death. It's the voice that is within us all, the one that tries quietly at first to get our attention before bellowing its message to us as we are called to face what we have created of our lives. Are you listening? As you read these words, it is perhaps tempting to try and find a box for me in your own mind, a box that will help you contextualize or understand what this story might be about. A box like adrenaline junkie, or backpacker, or even spiritual hippie. But try as you may, I'm certain that all the boxes you try will be too big, too small, or the wrong shape. My certainty arises from being unable to find my own box or container, if you will. The truth is, there is no box for any of us. As much as we try to package and label our experiences, our identities, or our lives, it's a fruitless endeavor that only limits the magic of who we really are, and it devalues the beauty that exists in our gifts, our flaws, and our wondrously nuanced complexity. In my own search for a box, a container that could hold me, or the answers that could soothe me, I had to get up close and personal to the boundaries of my own isness and isn'tness, only to find that those boundaries shifted each time I thought I was close. And who I thought I was not in fact who I am. In all of my endeavors, the answers I sought were not the answers I found. And it became ever more obvious that if we missed the journey, we risk the very real possibility that the destination feels somehow unsatisfying or hollow. The search itself is an endless quest that can lead you to the most unlikely places if you allow it. Will you allow it? What I learned and what I have to share is a story of how listening deeply can open you up to new possibilities that can change your life beyond measure. How it is in the seeking that we come to know more of the truth than in the discovery of the answers themselves. How, although it appears we have many choices, there is sometimes only a binary choice of feeling our pain or pushing it away. And how that choice can be the difference between emotional freedom and enduring suffering. Most of all, this book is an invitation to get a little closer to your own perception of discomfort as a tool for transcending the self-made bars of your own cage. Sometimes all it takes is to slow, to breathe consciously, and to be in love with every moment of whatever is happening. But it's easier said than done, right? It is my enduring hope that as you read, you too will slow down, breathe deeply, and take the untrodden path to the you that lies waiting beneath the surface. It is my hope that you will have the courage to take that sometimes rocky and uncertain track through the wilds of your own emotional terrain that takes you closer to your own truth, your own isness, and the wisdom that wants to arise within you. If only you'd stay long enough to listen. At the end of each chapter, I offer you the space to breathe, to contemplate, and to explore. A chance to pause, to listen, and savor the messages that arise from your own inner wisdom. For it is in the liminal spaces that we change the most. As we dig deeper, the cracks start to form in our inner armor. And through these cracks, our inner light can begin to shine our gifts out into the world. So let's go, dear reader. Let's quest together and see what you rediscover about yourself along the way. And that, my friends, is one of the options for opening my book. So I would love to hear your feedback. I'd love for you to join me on this new untrodden path towards a book in the making, to be here, because it's a long journey, and it's digging up, a lot of really interesting things that I hope, I really hope, my deepest heartfelt hope is that in writing this, it's going to help people out there. It's going to help people like you. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with me today. And let's keep going and connecting as I get this book together and get it out into the world. Much love. So much gratitude.